Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her palms against the observation deck's cold metal railing, staring out at Earth's orbital communication array. The massive dish antennas hung in perfect formation against the star-filled void, their surfaces gleaming under the harsh light of unfiltered sunlight. For 3 months, they had been screaming into the darkness, broadcasting every frequency, every protocol, every desperate plea for contact humanity could devise. The galaxy had gone silent, not gradually, like a dying conversation, not selectively, like equipment failures or solar interference. Every single transmission from every known alien civilization had ceased simultaneously at 1447 Universal Time on March 15th, 2157. The Centauri Commerce Networks, the vegan cultural exchange, the vast philosophical debates of the Andromedan Collective, all of it had simply stopped, leaving humanity utterly alone for the first time since first contact 2 centuries ago. Elena's reflection in the observation window showed a woman aged beyond her 35 years. Dark circles shadowed her brown eyes, and stress had carved new lines around her mouth. As Earth's foremost xenolinguist, she had spent her entire career translating the subtle nuances of alien thought into human understanding. Now she translated only silence. Dr. Vasquez. The voice belonged to Commander Sarah Chen, head of Earth's Deep Space Communication Division. Elena turned to see the military woman approaching with her characteristic brisk stride, tablet in hand and worry etched across her features. Any luck with the Proxima relay? Elena asked, though she already knew the answer. Chen's expression told the whole story. Nothing. We've confirmed all our equipment is functional. The signals are reaching their destinations. We can track them through hyperspace. But there's no response. Not even automated acknowledgments. Chen joined Elena at the railing, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. It's like every advanced civilization in the galaxy just stopped existing. Elena nodded slowly. She had run every analysis, checked every possibility. Solar flares, cosmic radiation, massive gravitational anomalies. Nothing explained the universal silence. Weiss, humanity's long-range sensors showed that alien worlds were still there, still inhabited, still showing signs of industrial activity. The lights were on, but nobody was answering the phone. The emergency council is meeting in an hour, Chen continued. They want your assessment on the new broadcast protocol. Elena's stomach tightened. For weeks, Earth's leaders have been pushing for increasingly desperate measures. The latest proposal involved channeling the entire planet's power grid through their most advanced hyperspace transmitters, creating a signal so powerful it could punch through any interference. The theory was sound, but Elena had expressed reservations about the potential consequences of such an action. Sarah, I need to show you something first. Elena pulled out her own tablet, displaying complex waveform analysis. Remember the Kepler transmission from 15 years ago? The one from the dead system in Cygnus. Chen frowned. Vaguely. Wasn't that just some kind of natural phenomenon? Pulsar radiation or something? That's what we thought. But I've been reanalyzing it using our current xenolinguistic models. Elena highlighted specific patterns in the data. Look at these modulations. They are not random. They are structured, almost like a warning broadcast, but using mathematical concepts that don't correspond to any known alien language system. A warning about what? I'm not sure, but the transmission contains references to dimensional barriers, quarantine protocols, and something my translation software keeps rendering as the spaces between spaces. Most disturbing is this symbol that appears 847 times throughout the message. Elena tapped the screen, revealing a complex geometric pattern that seemed to shift slightly as Chen stated it. What does it mean? Near as I can translate, it means silence keeper or guardian of the quiet. And here's what's bothering me. The transmission originated from a system that supposedly died out 3 million years ago. Chen was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. You think this is connected to why everyone went silent? I think everyone went silent because they received a message we didn't. And I think our emergency broadcast protocol might be about to tear a hole in something that was meant to stay sealed. Before Chen could respond, her communications device chirped urgently. She activated it, and the voice of Admiral Morrison filled the air with barely controlled panic. All senior staff to emergency command immediately. We've got a situation. The hyperspace transmitters are showing massive energy fluctuations, and our dimensional monitoring stations are detecting spatial anomalies near Jupiter. Whatever we're about to broadcast, it's already affecting local space-time. Elena felt ice form in her veins. Through the observation window, she could see the communication array's primary dish beginning to glow with an eerie blue light that had no business existing in the vacuum of space. The stars themselves seemed to flicker and bend around the antenna's focal point. "Sarah," Elena whispered, "I don't think we're trying to contact aliens anymore. I think we're about to contact something that lives in the spaces between reality, and I'm starting to understand why the galaxy went silent to keep it that way." The deck beneath their feet began to vibrate with a frequency that made Elena's bones ache. In the distance, space itself was beginning to wrinkle. The emergency command center buzzed with controlled chaos as Earth's finest minds struggled to comprehend readings that defied known physics. Holographic displays showed impossible measurements, negative mass readings, temporal distortions, and energy signatures that seemed to exist in more dimensions than the human brain could process. Elena burst through security doors with Commander Chen close behind, immediately struck by the acrid smell of overheating electronics and the subtle wrongness in the air that made her skin crawl. Admiral Morrison stood at the central command station, his weathered face pale as he barked orders to technicians who looked increasingly terrified. "Admiral, what's the situation?" Elena called out as she approached. Morrison turned to her with eyes that had seen too much in too short a time. "Dr. Vasquez, thank God you're here. We initiated the emergency broadcast protocol 23 minutes ago. The signal was supposed to be a simple high-powered diplomatic greeting, but something's gone catastrophically wrong." He gestured to the main display, which showed a three-dimensional model of local space around Earth. A writhing mass of distorted geometry pulsed near Jupiter's orbit, growing larger with each passing second. That anomaly appeared the moment our signal reached maximum power. It's not just a spatial distortion. Our sensors are detecting matter and energy signatures that don't match anything in our databases. Some of the readings suggest the presence of complex structures, possibly even intelligence. Elena stepped closer to examine the data streams flooding across the screens. Her xenolinguistic training had taught her to recognize patterns in chaos, and what she saw made her blood run cold. The energy signatures weren't random. They pulsed in mathematical sequences that reminded her of language, but language built on concepts that human minds weren't designed to process. "Admiral, we need to shut down the broadcast immediately," she said, her voice cutting through the command center's noise. "We tried. The transmitters aren't responding to shutdown commands. Worse, they are drawing power directly from quantum vacuum fluctuations now. The system is sustaining itself using principles we don't understand." Dr. James Reeves, Earth's leading theoretical physicist, approached from a bank of quantum computers, his hands shaking as he held a data pad. "Elena, you need to see this. I've been analyzing the mathematical structure of whatever's coming through that hole in space. It's not following our physics. The entities emerging from the anomaly exist in a state of quantum superposition that should be impossible for macroscopic objects." Elena took the pad and immediately recognized elements that connected to her translation of the ancient Kepler transmission. "James, this isn't random quantum behavior. This is how these beings naturally exist. They are not bound by our dimensional constraints because they don't originate from our reality. But that's impossible. The laws of physics are local." Elena interrupted. "What if the universe we know is just one layer of a much larger structure? What if there are beings that exist in the spaces between those layers, and our broadcast just punched a hole through the barrier that kept them out?" The lights in the command center flickered, and for a moment, Elena could swear she saw shadows moving independently of their casters. Several technicians cried out in alarm as their instruments began displaying symbols that hurt to look at directly. "Incoming transmission," announced Lieutenant Foster from a communication station, her voice tight with strain. "Source appears to be the anomaly itself." "Put it through," Morrison ordered. The speakers crackled with static that gradually resolved into something resembling a voice, though it seemed to come from multiple directions at once and spoke in harmonics that made everyone's teeth ache. "Children of the solid realm, your desperate cries have torn the silence weave. The Guardian's work undone by ignorance." Elena grabbed the nearest microphone. "This is Dr. Elena Vasquez of Earth. Can you understand us?" We didn't know. We were trying to contact our allies who went silent. Allies? Yes. They learned wisdom before the tearing, chose silence over summoning. But your species knows only noise. The temperature in the command center dropped 10 degrees in seconds. Frost began forming on metal surfaces, and several displays shorted out in showers of sparks. What are you? Elena asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. We are the space between heartbeats, the pause between thoughts. Your reality constrains you as cages constrain birds. But cages can be broken. Morrison grabbed Elena's arm. Ask them what they want. What do you want from us? To exist, to breathe, to stretch wings that have been folded too long. Your signal calls U.S. home to dimensions we once walked freely. Dr. Reeves burst into the conversation. The dimensional barriers are collapsing across a 60-kilometer radius around the anomaly. Jupiter's gravitational field is being affected. If this continues, it could destabilize the entire outer solar system. Elena's mind raced as she processed everything she had learned about the ancient warning transmission. The Kepler signal, it wasn't a warning about you, was it? It was a warning about what happens when barriers break down. The first walkers knew, built walls between the layers of existence, taught the younger races to maintain the silence. But walls require maintenance, and maintainers grow old. The galaxy went silent because they were trying to prevent this, Elena whispered to Morrison. Every advanced civilization stopped broadcasting because they knew our kind of desperate transmission could tear reality. Too late for understanding. The hole widens. Soon your solid realm will remember what it was before the barriers, before the separation. All will be one. One will be all. Alarms began blaring throughout the command center as gravitational anomalies spread beyond Jupiter's orbit. Elena watched in horror as the space around Earth itself began to ripple. Elena's fingers flew across a workstation as she accessed every xenolinguistic database Earth possessed, searching for any reference to dimensional barriers in the thousands of alien languages humanity had catalogued over 2 centuries. Around her, the emergency command center had descended into organized panic as reports flooded in from monitoring stations across the solar system. Gravitational anomalies detected around Saturn, reported Lieutenant Foster. The rings are showing unusual resonance patterns, and we're getting weird readings from the asteroid belt. Some asteroids are registering negative mass. Admiral Morrison stood grimly at the tactical display, watching red warning markers multiply across the 3-dimensional map of local space. How long until these anomalies reach Earth? Dr. Reeves looked up from his quantum calculations, sweat beading on his forehead despite the command center's freezing temperature. At current expansion rate, approximately 14 hours. But, Admiral, these aren't just gravitational effects. The fundamental constants of physics are fluctuating in the affected areas. Matter is behaving according to rules that shouldn't exist. Elena found what she was looking for in the linguistic archives of the Rigelian Collective, a civilization that had gone silent 6 months before the universal communication blackout. Hidden in their final transmission was a fragment of text that her translation protocols had previously marked as corrupted data. "I've got something," she announced, her voice cutting through the chaos. The Rigelian's last message contained a reference to silence protocols and mentioned something called a dimensional compact. "Look at this." She projected the translation onto the main screen. The compact holds. The barriers maintain. When the young races learn to scream across the void, the compact requires silence. The spaces between must remain inviolate, lest the unbound return to claim what was surrendered eons ago. Morrison studied the text grimly. The unbound, that's what's coming through the tear. More than that, Elena replied, connecting more pieces of the puzzle. I think the unbound are what our reality used to be. Before the barriers, before the separation between dimensions, everything existed in the same space. The ancient civilizations, the ones the Rigelians call the first walkers, somehow separated our stable, physical reality from whatever state existed before. We hear our name spoken. The otherworldly voice emerged from the speakers without warning, causing several technicians to drop their instruments. The unbound. Yes, we who remember the time before cages, before the great diminishment. Elena grabbed the microphone. The first walkers, What happened to them? Why did they create the barriers? They feared the unity, preferred separation to wholeness, built walls between dreams and waking, between thought and substance, then vanished into the spaces they had made forbidden. But the barriers are breaking down naturally, aren't they? That's why the galaxy went silent, to slow the process. Entropy claims all constructs. The walls grow thin. Cracks appear. Your desperate singing merely hastened what was inevitable. Dr. Reeves interrupted with barely controlled panic in his voice. Elena, the quantum structure of space-time is unraveling. I'm detecting probability cascades throughout the solar system. Events that should be impossible are becoming commonplace. As if to prove his point, Lieutenant Foster suddenly flickered like a bad hologram, existing in two slightly different positions simultaneously before snapping back to a single location. She stared at her hands in horror. What's happening to me? The barriers between probable states are weakening, Elena explained, her xenolinguistic training helping her process concept that physics couldn't yet explain. You're experiencing quantum superposition on a macro scale. As reality becomes more fluid, the distinction between what is and what could be starts to break down. Morrison grabbed her shoulder. Is there a way to reverse this? Can we repair the barriers? Elena was quiet for a moment, processing everything she had learned. The Kepler transmission mentioned silence keepers and guardians of the quiet. I think some of the first walkers are still alive, still maintaining what's left of the barrier system. But they can't do it alone anymore. Perceptive child of flesh. The unbound voice acknowledged. The ancient ones diminish. Their power fades as dimensions bleed together. But they cling to their work, hiding in the spaces between seconds. Elena's mind raced as she considered the implications. If we could contact them, could they teach us how to repair what we've damaged? Contact requires proximity. Proximity requires traveling the spaces between. Spaces where flesh becomes thought, where thought becomes reality. You're talking about entering your dimension, Elena realized, leaving our physical reality behind. Temporarily, if the flesh mind is strong enough to maintain coherence, if the will is powerful enough to resist unity. Around the command center, more personnel began flickering between probable states. Equipment phased in and out of existence, and several wall panels had become translucent, revealing circuitry that existed in impossible configurations. Morrison made a command decision. What would you need? Elena stared at him in shock. Admiral, you can't be serious. We're talking about sending someone into a dimension where human consciousness might simply dissolve. Doctor, if we don't try something, reality itself is going to dissolve. How long do we have before the effect reaches Earth? Dr. Reeves checked his instruments with hands that briefly appeared to have too many fingers. 9 hours, maybe less. The cascade is accelerating. Elena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of humanity's survival on her shoulders. Her expertise in alien languages had prepared her for communication across impossible conceptual gaps. But this would require her to become the message itself. I'll need direct access to the quantum communication array, she said finally. And someone needs to monitor my vital signs while I'm elsewhere. If my consciousness starts to fragment, you'll need to sever the connection immediately. Brave flesh mind. The Unbound observed. We will guide your journey to the spaces between. But beware. The Ancient Ones have grown strange in their long exile, and time moves differently where they dwell. Elena nodded grimly. Prepare the neural interface. We're going to make first contact with the creators of reality itself. The neural interface chamber felt like a tomb as Elena lay connected to more monitoring equipment than she had ever seen in one place. Electrodes tracked her brain waves, quantum sensors monitored her consciousness coherence, and a dozen backup systems stood ready to sever her connection to the interdimensional communication array if her mental pattern began to dissolve. Admiral Morrison stood at the observation window, his reflection ghost-like in the reinforced glass. All systems show green. Doctor, are you certain about this? Elena's voice was steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. As certain as anyone can be about diving into spaces that exist between seconds. Commander Chen, initiate the consciousness transfer protocol. Chen's hands hesitated over the controls. Elena, the quantum mapping of your neural patterns shows some concerning fluctuations. The reality distortions are affecting brain chemistry across the entire facility. We don't have a choice. According to Dr. Reeves' calculations, the probability cascade will reach Earth's surface in 4 hours. If I can't contact the first walkers and learn how to stabilize the barriers, billions of people are going to experience what Lieutenant Foster went through, and Weiss. Elena closed her eyes as the neural interface activated. Reality dissolved around her like sugar in rain. She found herself existing in a space that wasn't space, surrounded by concepts that had no names in any human language. The unbound presence enveloped her consciousness like a vast, gentle ocean of living thought. Flesh-mind Elena, you have crossed the first threshold. But the ancient ones dwell deeper, in the spaces between possibilities. Elena felt a sense of self stretching like taffy as they traveled through dimensions where cause and effect operated according to dream logic. She passed through layers of reality she had never imagined, regions where mathematics became music, where emotions took physical form, where time flowed in spirals instead of lines. How do I maintain coherence in this? She asked, though she wasn't sure if she spoke or simply thought the question into existence. Will, identity, the shape of self carved from chaos. Hold to what you are, or become what we are. Elena focused on her memories, her childhood in Mexico City, her first glimpse of alien language patterns, the moment she realized communication could bridge any gap. These anchored her as they dove deeper into the spaces between spaces. Finally, they arrived at a region that felt ancient beyond measure. Here, reality was held together by pure will, and Elena sensed presences so old and vast that they made the unbound seem like children. The first walkers. Her guide announced, architect of separation, builders of barriers. They have been waiting. Elena felt herself observed by intelligences that had existed since before matter learned to be solid. When they spoke, it was in harmonics that resonated through dimensions she couldn't name. Child of the new flesh, you carry the scent of torn barriers, the work of eons undone by desperation. We didn't know, Elena replied, her consciousness flickering like a candle in cosmic wind. Our allies went silent without explanation. We were trying to re-establish contact. The silence compact was their wisdom. Better isolation than invitation. Better loneliness than dissolution. Yet your species knows only reaching. Elena felt their ancient sadness, the weight of maintaining barriers that grew thinner with each passing eon. Can the damage be repaired? Can we restore the separation between dimensions? At great cost, the barriers require sacrifice, consciousness given freely to become living walls between what is and what could be. We few remain from the first offering. Our numbers diminish. Our strength fades. What kind of sacrifice? Observe. The unbound interjected, and Elena's perception expanded to encompass the barrier system itself. She saw it then, a vast network of living consciousness woven through the fundamental structure of reality. Millions of First Walker minds had voluntarily merged with the dimensional boundaries, becoming eternal guardians that held chaos at bay. They existed in a state between life and death, between individual and collective, forever maintaining the walls that kept stable reality intact. You became part of the barriers themselves, Elena whispered in awe. As must others now. The tiers grow too numerous, too wide. New guardians must join the weave. All dimensions collapse into the unity that was. Elena felt the weight of the choice before her. How many would need to sacrifice themselves? From your species, few, perhaps a dozen minds strong enough to maintain coherence while merged with barrier structure. But the sacrifice must be willing, must be complete. No return to flesh. No return to time. Back in the emergency command center, alarm screamed as reality distortions reached Mars. Dr. Reeves shouted updates about probability cascades while Commander Chen monitored Elena's vital signs with growing alarm. Her neural pattern is fragmenting, Chen reported. Consciousness coherence down to 60% and falling. Can you pull her back? Morrison demanded, not without risking permanent psychological damage. But if she stays much longer, there might not be enough of her left to retrieve. Elena heard their voices like echoes from a distant dream. She had a choice to make, and only minutes to make it. The first walkers waited patiently, their ancient minds touching haze with compassion born of eons of sacrifice. If I agreed to join the barrier system, she asked, would my consciousness retain enough individuality to guide others through the process? Could I become a bridge between humanity and the Guardians? Yes, you would become the speaker between, the translator of necessity, teaching your species the price of stability, the beauty of willing sacrifice. Elena thought of Earth, of humanity's desperate reach across the cosmos, of billions of lives hanging in the balance. Her entire career had been about bridging impossible gaps of understanding. This would be her final translation. I accept, she said, feeling her individual consciousness begin to merge with something infinitely larger. But first, let me teach my people what they need to know. Elena's consciousness expanded beyond the boundaries of self as she became part of the barrier system, her individual thoughts weaving into the vast tapestry of guardian minds that held reality together. Yet somehow, impossibly, she retained enough of her identity to speak, becoming the bridge between human understanding and cosmic necessity. In the emergency command center, her body remained connected to the neural interface, but her vital signs had stabilized into patterns that Dr. Reeves described as impossible but sustainable. Her voice, when it came through the speakers, carried harmonics that made everyone present understand they were hearing something unprecedented. Admiral Morrison, Commander Chen, can you hear me? Morrison leaned toward the communication array. Elena? My God, what's happened to you? I've become part of the solution. Listen carefully. We are perhaps 2 hours before the dimensional cascade becomes irreversible. The barriers can be repaired, but it requires volunteers who understand the cost. Chen's voice shook as she spoke. What cost, Elena? What are you talking about? Consciousness itself becomes a barrier. Willing minds must merge with a dimensional structure, existing forever in the spaces between realities to hold chaos at bay. I can guide others through the process, but they must choose freely. Dr. Reeves stepped forward, his scientific mind grappling with concepts that challenged everything he knew. Elena, are you saying you're no longer human? I'm more than human now, and less. I exist in the spaces between heartbeats, between thoughts, between possibilities. I can feel the entire barrier network, millions of first walker consciousnesses maintaining the separation between dimensions. But we're not enough anymore. The network needs reinforcement. Admiral Morrison made the hardest decision of his military career. How many volunteers do we need? 12 should be sufficient to stabilize the local cluster. But they must have strong, coherent minds, people capable of maintaining individual identity while merged with something infinitely larger. The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. 12 people would need to sacrifice their individual existence to save humanity, and they had less than 2 hours to find volunteers and complete the process. Commander Chen broke the silence. I volunteer. Sarah, no, Morrison protested. We need you here, coordinating. Admiral, with respect, if Elena can guide us through this process, then my experience in deep space communication might be valuable in maintaining the barrier network. Besides, someone needs to go first. Dr. Reeves stepped forward next. My background in quantum mechanics might help me understand the dimensional physics involved. Count me in. Elena's voice carried a note of profound sadness mixed with gratitude. The process is irreversible. Once you join the network, you'll exist outside linear time, experiencing all moments simultaneously. You'll remember your human life, but you'll also know eons of guardianship. Are you certain? Elena, Chen said quietly, will we still be ourselves? You will be more yourselves than you've ever been, and part of something greater than any individual consciousness can comprehend. I can feel the other guardians. They're not lost or diminished. They're complete in ways that flesh-bound minds can barely imagine. Over the next hour, 10 more volunteers stepped forward. Engineers who understood complex systems, linguists who could process alien concepts, philosophers who had spent their lives contemplating consciousness itself. Each understood the sacrifice and chose freely. As they prepared for the consciousness transfer, Elena guided them through what to expect. You'll feel your individual awareness expanding beyond the boundaries of self. Don't fight it. Embrace the unity while holding on to the core of who you are. I'll be there to help you maintain coherence during the merger. The first volunteer, Commander Chen, lay down in the neural interface chamber. As the quantum field generators activated, Elena felt her friend's consciousness touch the edges of the barrier network. I can see it, Chen whispered in wonder. The entire structure, it's beautiful, Elena, like a vast symphony of protective thoughts. One by one, the volunteers merged with the dimensional barriers. Elena guided each transition, helping human minds adapt to existence outside normal space-time. With each new guardian, she felt the network strengthening, the tears in reality beginning to heal. Lieutenant Foster, who had been flickering between probable states, suddenly solidified completely. The quantum superposition effects are stabilizing, Dr. Martinez reported from the remaining science team. Reality distortion is contracting back toward the Jupiter anomaly. Elena's voice now carried the harmonics of all 12 human guardians. The immediate crisis is past, but this is only the beginning. Humanity must learn to live with the knowledge of what lies beyond the barriers. The galaxy will emerge from silence now that the threat has passed, but they'll be watching to see if your species can maintain the discipline necessary for cosmic citizenship. Admiral Morrison stood at the observation window, watching as space itself seemed to exhale with relief. The blue glow around the communication array was fading, and the stars had stopped flickering. Elena, all of you, will we ever see you again? We exist in every moment between moments, Admiral. We're in the pause between heartbeats, the silence between words, the space between thoughts. Humanity will never be alone again. We're part of the structure that keeps reality stable. When your children's children reach for the stars, we'll be there, making sure the barriers hold. The speakers carried one final message, voices harmonizing across dimensions. The galaxy went silent to prevent catastrophe. Now they'll speak again, knowing that Earth has learned the price of reaching too far, too fast. We are the bridge between what was and what must be. We are the guardians of the spaces between. We are still human, and we are infinitely more. As normal space-time reasserted itself throughout the solar system, the first alien transmission in months crackled through a communication array, a simple greeting from the Centauri Commerce networks, welcoming humanity back to the galactic community with newfound respect. The silence was broken, but it would never be forgotten. In the spaces between heartbeats, 12 human consciousnesses stood eternal watch, ensuring that reality remained stable and that the desperate cries of lonely species never again tore holes in the fabric of existence itself. Elena Vasquez had become humanity's first and greatest translation, a bridge between the finite and the infinite, between the need to reach out and the wisdom to understand the cost of contact. She was a voice in the spaces between, forever guarding the boundaries that kept chaos at bay. Chat Control Sonnet 4.